Close your eyes. Imagine you wake up one morning and everything feels off. Not dramatically, not like a scene from a dystopian movie. No robots marching down your street, no red pills, no sudden glitch in the sky. Just a subtle unease, like walking into a familiar room and noticing the furniture has shifted ever so slightly. You can't quite explain it, but something about the way the light hits your coffee mug or the feeling of the air on your skin makes you stop and ask, is this real? Or more curiously, am I real? This isn't a horror story. It isn't even fiction. It's your mind, your beautifully complex, endlessly creative mind, performing a little sleight of hand, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Your brain is a master illusionist, and for the most part, you never notice the tricks. Tonight, we step into its theater, a place where perception becomes foggy, certainty becomes slippery, and truth is a shapeshifter. Tonight, we gently enter the Hall of Mirrors. This hall isn't made of glass and silver. It's built from your beliefs, your habits, your expectations, and the shortcuts your brain takes to make life livable. Each mirror doesn't reflect what is, but what you think is. Some are bent, others are smudged, and a few offer no reflection at all. You'll see familiar things, faces, memories, choices, but they won't look quite right. That's the unsettling power of psychological illusions. And unlike the magician who performs for applause, your brain does this work in silence. Every day, without your permission, it edits, colors, distorts, and invents. Because the world is too big, too fast, too chaotic to take in unfiltered. So it compresses, like a zip file, leaving you with a neat version of reality. One you can manage, one that helps you survive. But what happens when you unzip that file? What do you find? That's what we're about to explore. A psychological illusion is not magic, but it might as well be. It feels magical because it reveals how much of our reality is interpretation. Take a moment to really think about that. We often move through the world with the quiet assumption that our senses tell us the truth, that what we see, hear, and feel corresponds faithfully to what's out there. But illusions expose the cracks in that trust. They show that our senses aren't windows, they're paintings. The brain isn't a passive receiver of information. It's an artist. It paints meaning onto sensory input. It guesses. It fills in gaps. It adds shadows where there are none and erases edges that might actually be there. And it does all of this instantly, quietly, and constantly. Most of the time, these illusions are harmless, practical shortcuts. But sometimes they cut deeper. They touch the essence of who we are, what we know, and what we believe. Let's consider the illusion of control. Have you ever pressed a pedestrian crosswalk button, believing it made the light change faster? Studies show that many of those buttons are actually disconnected. They don't do anything. And yet, pressing them gives us a feeling of agency. It soothes us. It feeds the illusion that we're in charge of our environment. Now, think about what that implies. The act of pressing the button isn't inherently problematic. But if the comfort we draw from it is based on a falsehood, then how much of our daily peace is similarly constructed? How much of our comfort, our confidence, our sense of self is built upon illusions like this? And if pressing a useless button makes us feel in control, what else are we doing to reinforce stories that simply aren't true? When we remember the past, are we reliving it or rewriting it? When we look in the mirror, do we see ourselves or a curated version of the self our brain thinks we should believe in? Consider memory. It's one of the most sacred parts of our identity, the sum of our experiences. the storyline of who we are. But memories aren't video recordings. They're more like dreams. Each time we recall them, we reconstruct them. Change a detail here, forget something there, add a layer of meaning, remove a painful edge, and over time, the memory becomes less about what happened and more about what we need to believe happened. This isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Memory is adaptive. It changes not to lie, but to help us function, to protect us. And yet, when we realize that our past is editable, our identity begins to wobble. Who are we if the story keeps changing? This is the quiet terror of the Hall of Mirrors. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers truths that feel like lies, and lies that feel like truths. And all the while, it rocks the boat of certainty. It invites you to sit with the discomfort that maybe, just maybe, you've never really known yourself as well as you thought. And still, we resist. Because illusion feels safer than chaos, certainty feels warmer than doubt. But what if, instead of resisting, we learned to dwell in that uncertainty, to find peace not in clarity, but in curiosity? Take a breath. Let your eyes soften. Let the questions drift through you like mist. What if your thoughts are not yours? What if your memories are rewrites? What if your choices were made before you felt the urge to choose? These aren't dark thoughts. They're doorways. They don't rob you of meaning. They deepen it. Because if everything is filtered, then every moment is a negotiation with the unknown. And that makes every moment sacred, fragile, worth noticing. The illusions we'll explore tonight are not just psychological tricks. They are revelations. They unveil the scaffolding of your mental life. They show you how the trick is done, not to spoil the magic, but to deepen your awe. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have tried to understand how and why we believe what we do. They've studied optical illusions, cognitive biases, memory distortions, moral paradoxes, and identity loops. And what they keep finding, over and over, is this. The mind is not a truth machine. It is a meaning machine. It cares more about coherence than accuracy. It wants stories, not facts. And sometimes, those stories are more comforting than the truth could ever be. But comfort is not the only value. Sometimes breaking the spell of illusion is the first step toward freedom. Not freedom in the political sense. Freedom of the mind. Freedom to question. Freedom to not know. And freedom to be okay with that. As we begin this journey, I invite you to become both the magician and the audience. Watch closely. Listen gently. Let your assumptions soften. You may begin to notice illusions you never saw before, in your habits, your beliefs, even your emotions. You may catch yourself making a snap judgment and pause. You may hear a familiar phrase and suddenly question its origin. These small shifts are the signs, the cracks in the mirror, the light leaking through. And remember, the goal is not to shatter the mirrors, it's to walk among them, eyes open, with a sense of wonder. To realize that the world reflected back at you is not fixed, not final, and not entirely real, but it is beautiful. And so we begin. Let's start gently with illusions that tease the senses, that show you how even the act of seeing can be deceptive, that what you think is clear and visible may not be real at all. Take a breath, let your vision blur, and step forward into the first mirror. Your eyes may be open, but your brain is still guessing. Close your eyes for just a moment. Breathe in deeply. Exhale. And now, open them again. What you're seeing, this moment, this room, the screen in front of you, feels immediate and unquestionably real. You're not questioning the shape of the walls, or whether the colors are accurate, or if the lines are where they appear to be. Why would you? You trust your eyes. You trust that what you see is what is, but that trust is quietly misplaced. You are not seeing the world directly. You are seeing an interpretation of the world, a filtered, reconstructed, and often deceptive version of reality created entirely within your brain. Your eyes are not windows. They are sensors, crude, limited, and shockingly easy to fool. And what your brain does with that raw, chaotic input is a kind of constant storytelling. Your brain is less a mirror and more a guesser. It guesses what should be there, based on memory, pattern, and assumption. Sometimes it guesses beautifully. Sometimes it guesses wrong, terribly, beautifully wrong. Tonight, we begin with one of the gentlest but most disturbing truths of perception. You cannot trust what you see. Let's begin with a simple example, one you've likely encountered at some point in your life, perhaps in a textbook, or an optical illusion book, or even online. Two lines, equal in length, placed side by side. One ends in arrowheads that point inward, the other in arrowheads that point outward. These are the Muller-Lyer illusion lines. Now, logically, you may know the lines are the same. You may have seen the image before. But even knowing the truth, your eyes continue to lie to you. One line looks longer than the other. Why? Because your brain is not measuring the line. It is interpreting context. The arrowheads trigger a kind of spatial assumption. Your visual system associates inward arrows with edges moving away from you, and outward arrows with edges coming toward you. In essence, your brain is trying to map three-dimensional information onto a two-dimensional space. And in the process, it bends the truth. Visual illusions like this one are not quirks or glitches. They are windows, brief moments where the machinery of perception becomes visible. The lie becomes obvious, and in that sliver of awareness, we see what is almost always hidden. Perception is construction. Consider the rotating snake's illusion. You stare at the image, and the rings seem to shimmer, swirl, and shift, even though the page or screen is still. There is no movement, none at all, and yet your mind insists that something is happening. Why? Because motion, like color or shape, is not passively received. It is inferred. Your brain is built to detect motion quickly. It's a survival mechanism. When we were evolving as a species, seeing a predator approach in the distance, detecting motion at the edge of our field of vision, was often the difference between life and death. Your brain, in its eagerness, sometimes overcompensates. It detects movement in patterns where no motion exists. In the case of the rotating snakes, certain combinations of contrast, color gradients, and spacing trick the motion-detecting neurons in your visual cortex. They fire even when they shouldn't. The result? Phantom movement, a hallucination created not by chemicals or trauma, but by your brain doing exactly what it thinks it should be doing, protecting you. Or take the Kinesa triangle. This illusion presents you with the appearance of a bright white triangle that appears to hover above three Pac-Man-like shapes. But look closer. The triangle isn't actually drawn. Its edges aren't there. There are no lines. And yet, your brain sees it. It insists on it. This is known as an illusory contour. Your brain is so addicted to patterns, to familiar shapes, that it will invent borders where none exist. It prefers to see a triangle, even a fake one, rather than deal with the ambiguity of disjointed shapes. The brain fills in the gaps. It completes the picture. It does this constantly, not just in illusions like the Kanitsa triangle, but in every moment of your waking life. Imagine walking through a foggy forest. The path curves slightly. The light is low. You glance quickly to your left and you see a figure, a person, standing behind a tree. Your heart jumps. Your breath halts. But you look again, and it's just branches and shadow. Your brain filled in a pattern. It completed the picture before you had a chance to verify. This filling in is not a flaw. It's a feature. The brain doesn't want to wait for all the information. It wants to make fast, often accurate, but not always truthful predictions. And when you live in a world where speed matters more than accuracy, illusions are the inevitable side effect. Now breathe. Take a moment to reflect on this. Your vision is not a camera. It doesn't passively record light. It's a living system, dynamic, predictive, creative. Every second, it is taking raw light and shadow and running it through layers of filters, evolutionary bias, past experience, emotion, expectation. You see what your brain thinks is there, not what is. That's why magicians can fool you, why mirages can appear on hot roads, why two shades of the same color can look entirely different depending on their background. Your brain is not looking for truth. It's looking for coherence, for utility, for patterns that feel right, even if they're wrong. This revelation, the eyes lying, the brain completing the illusion, has deeper implications than a few cool party tricks or Instagram puzzles. It suggests that what you call reality is already virtual, not in the digital sense, but in the philosophical one. Reality is a projection, processed and reassembled in your mind, and never fully confirmed. In the early 20th century, psychologist Hermann Helmholtz referred to perception as unconscious inference. He proposed that the brain does not directly perceive the world. It infers what is most likely to be true, based on the available sensory data. Much like a detective reconstructing a crime scene from fragments and hints, your mind assembles reality from incomplete clues. And sometimes it assembles wrongly. Even the size of objects is up for negotiation. Consider the famous Ames room. It's a distorted room that, when viewed from a specific angle, appears to be normal. But when people walk around inside, one person seems to grow into a giant, while another shrinks like a child. The room's true shape is trapezoidal, not rectangular, but the brain insists it's a normal room, because that's the assumption it's built on. This shows that depth, size, scale, all things we take for granted, are interpretations. There's no ruler in the eye. The brain constructs its own measuring tape based on environmental cues, and those cues are stunningly easy to manipulate. Let's take a moment here. Breathe in. Let this idea wash over you. What you think is out there is often just in here. A brain-generated approximation of a world you may never see directly. Let your breath return to normal. Now, consider this. Even color, that beautiful tapestry of reds and blues and golden hues, is not a property of the world. It is a sensation, manufactured entirely in your head. Objects don't have color. They reflect wavelengths of light. Your eyes detect those wavelengths and your brain labels them. But those labels can change. Shift the lighting, change the background, alter the context, and suddenly, a dress appears blue and black to some, and white and gold to others. You may remember this viral image, the dress. It became a cultural moment because it forced people to confront a strange and disorienting truth. People can look at the same object and literally see different things. Not metaphorically, but neurologically. Their brains made different assumptions about the lighting, the angle, the context, and constructed two entirely different realities. Both felt real. Both were wrong, or right, or neither. That's the nature of visual illusion, and that's what makes it all so quietly unnerving. It's not just about being fooled by clever tricks. It's about the realization that every moment of your life has been filtered through this same fallible system. Every glance, every sunrise, every person's face. What you saw was never the raw truth. It was a beautifully believable lie, rendered just for you. And this has consequences, profound ones. Think of eyewitness testimony in courtrooms. People swear they saw something, a license plate, a suspect's face, a weapon, and yet studies consistently show that human perception is unreliable under pressure. Stress, speed, fear, they all distort what we see. But because our vision feels so real, we trust it, even when we shouldn't. Think of your own life, the arguments you've had because you saw it with your own eyes, the memories you cherish because you remember how it looked, the assumptions you made based on body language, glances, expressions, all filtered, all processed, all guessed. It can be humbling, even unsettling, but it can also be freeing. Because once you understand that perception is malleable, that seeing is not believing, you can approach the world with a new kind of awareness, a gentler one, less quick to judge, more open to uncertainty, more curious about the invisible filters coloring your every experience. Let this thought settle in your mind. Your brain is not trying to deceive you. It's trying to help you. It evolved not to show you what is, but what is useful, what is safe, what is expected. And when those expectations are violated, when something breaks the pattern, that's when the illusion is revealed. That's when the curtain is pulled back. And in those moments, we glimpse something raw, not the world as it is, but the mind as it operates. We see the painter, not the painting. And it is beautiful, and strange, and quietly terrifying. As you lay back, perhaps now dimming the lights, letting the room blur into shadows and softness, know this: you've never truly seen the world. Not once. You've only ever seen what your mind told you was there. And perhaps that's all you ever needed. And if your senses can't be trusted, what about your memories? That, dear listener, is where we go next. Let's gently turn the page to the illusions of the mind's archive, where memories shift, blend, and deceive, where the past itself becomes a fiction you sincerely believe. Your memories feel sacred, permanent, but what if they're fake? Close your eyes for a moment, if it feels safe to do so. Let your mind drift, slowly, gently, back in time. Not to any specific event, just glide along the current of your own past. Maybe you feel the warmth of a childhood summer, the sound of a parent's voice echoing from another room, a classroom, a kiss, a falling leaf, a smell you haven't sensed in years. Memory is a powerful thing. It stitches together your life, creating a story that feels unbroken and continuous, from the child you were to the person you are now. Each memory, you believe, is a step on that journey. A solid foundation, a home video playing faithfully in your mind. But what if that foundation isn't as solid as you think? What if that voice you recall never said the words you remember? What if the kiss didn't happen the way your mind says it did? What if that falling leaf was never there at all? Tonight, we gently open the drawers of the mind's archive and peek inside. What we find may feel disorienting, unsettling, and yet oddly liberating. This is the story of how memory lies, not maliciously, not dramatically, but subtly, quietly, constantly. The illusion of memory is perhaps one of the most convincing lies the brain tells. Unlike visual illusions, which you can often spot and correct, memory illusions are deeply embedded. We trust them not because they're accurate, but because they feel right. And that feeling is the illusion. In 2009, a study asked people to recall where they were when they first heard about the 9/11 attacks. Participants gave detailed answers: what they were doing, who they were with, how they felt. The stories were vivid, emotional, believable. But here's the twist. When researchers followed up with the same people a few years later, many of those memories had changed, and not in small ways. People remembered being in different locations, with different people, reacting in completely different ways. And yet, when told their memories were inconsistent, many refused to believe it. That's how powerful memory feels, even when it's wrong. It feels right. One of the most famous memory researchers in history, Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, spent decades studying just how easily human memory can be manipulated. In one of her most well-known experiments, she showed participants a video of a car accident and then asked them questions about what they had seen. Some participants were asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? Others were asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Just one word changed, but the effect was dramatic. Those who heard smashed estimated significantly higher speeds, and, more disturbingly, many of them later remembered seeing broken glass at the scene, even though there was none. Their brains had not just changed the detail, they had invented it based on a single suggestive word. This is the misinformation effect, when subtle cues or phrasing alter your memory of an event. It happens in police investigations, in therapy sessions, in everyday conversations. Someone asks you, wasn't he wearing a red hat? And suddenly, your mind adjusts, rewrites, overlays a red hat onto the person's head in your mental film reel. And now it's there, forever part of your version of what happened. This isn't rare. It's not a flaw in only some people. It is how memory works, reconstructive, not reproductive. You don't pull out a memory the way you'd rewind a tape. You rebuild it each time, piece by piece, from fragments, emotions, images, suggestions, and beliefs. Every time you remember something, you are remembering the last time you remembered it. And with each retelling, subtle distortions creep in. Memory is like a game of telephone, played inside your own mind. Now, take a breath. Let that idea ripple through you. Every cherished memory, every regret, every origin story you've ever told yourself may be a polished fiction, not a lie, but a mosaic, a constructed truth. This brings us to one of the strangest and most widely discussed examples of mass memory distortion, the Mandela effect. In 2010, a woman posted online about her vivid memory of Nelson Mandela dying in a South African prison in the 1980s. She remembered news coverage, the funeral, global mourning. But Mandela hadn't died in prison. He'd been released, gone on to become president, and passed away decades later. What was stranger was that thousands of other people shared the same false memory. They, too, remembered his death in the 1980s in detail. From there, the Mandela effect grew into a cultural phenomenon. People began pointing out other shared false memories, such as the Berenstain Bears, often remembered as Berenstein, or the Monopoly Man, remembered as having a monocle, though he doesn't, or the color of C-3PO's leg in Star Wars. One of them is silver, not gold. These aren't simple spelling errors or forgotten facts. They're remembered with conviction. People swear by them, argue about them, even question whether they're evidence of alternate timelines or simulated realities. But the truth is less fantastical and perhaps more disturbing. These are the predictable side effects of how memory encodes and organizes information: by familiarity, by assumption, by social consensus. We remember what fits, not necessarily what happened. Now, think of a moment you consider fundamental to who you are. Maybe it was your first heartbreak, a childhood victory, a betrayal, a moment of revelation. That memory may feel like a cornerstone, unchanging, etched into the walls of your mind. But ask yourself, how many times have you told that story? How many times have you felt it again, interpreted it, explained it, reshaped it? Each telling is a renovation, each feeling a reinterpretation. Your memory isn't a recording, it's a rewriting. Every act of remembering is also an act of editing. This challenges one of the deepest assumptions we carry, that memory is the thread that binds our identity. If the thread is tangled, what does that say about the self? In her book, The 7 Sins of Memory, psychologist Daniel Schachter outlines how memory's failures, transience, suggestibility, bias, misattribution, are not just errors, but byproducts of a system designed to prioritize usefulness over accuracy. You are not built to be a perfect historian. You are built to be a functional one, to remember the lessons, not the details, to carry the emotions, not the facts, to protect the ego, not the objective truth. This is why victims of trauma may misremember events in ways that reduce their pain, why couples argue over who said what, with both sides completely convinced, why you can remember something that never happened because someone you trust told you it did. And sometimes, memory is weaponized. In the 1990s, a controversial wave of recovered memory therapy swept through parts of the mental health world. Patients were encouraged to uncover hidden memories of childhood abuse through hypnosis, visualization, and suggestive questioning. Many remembered terrible events and accused family members. Some of those memories were true, but many were not. Courts later overturned convictions based on false memories. Families were shattered. The therapy fell into disrepute. What was learned, painfully, is that people can be led to believe almost anything if the suggestion is strong enough and the desire to make sense of pain is deep enough. Let this settle. If your memory can be shaped by suggestion, if you can recall things that never happened, if your brain prioritizes meaning over accuracy, then what exactly are you made of? This is not meant to frighten. It is meant to awaken, to recognize that the self, the you that narrates your story, may be built upon shifting sand, beautiful sand, necessary sand, but sand nonetheless. There's an old saying, we are the stories we tell ourselves. But what happens when those stories are wrong? It doesn't mean they're meaningless. A false memory can still carry true emotion. It can still influence decisions, relationships, even creativity. But it invites a new kind of humility, a softer approach to truth, to admit that your memories, like dreams, are stories told by the brain to itself, full of meaning, but not always facts. And in that softness, there is freedom. You can question your pain. You can revisit your assumptions. You can hold your memories with open hands, not as sacred, untouchable relics, but as evolving pages in a story that is still being written. So as you rest here, listening gently, let your thoughts drift through your own archive, not to rewrite it, but to honor its fragility. That childhood moment you've cherished for so long, it may not have happened the way you remember, but it shaped you all the same. That argument you replay again and again, perhaps both of you were right, or wrong, or simply human, and that version of yourself you carry, strong or broken or evolving, is not a static photograph. It is a living sculpture, changing, shaped by breath, by emotion, by memory, by forgetting. You are not a hard drive. You are a poem. And speaking of identity, let's question who is even doing the thinking. What if the narrator itself, the voice that recalls, reflects, and rewrites, is just another illusion? Join me now as we walk deeper into the next chamber of the mind, where the self begins to flicker, where boundaries blur, and we ask one of the oldest, strangest questions. Who are you? You say, I think, but who is I? Take a breath. Slowly, let it settle into your chest like a calm ripple over still water. Now quietly ask yourself, who is breathing? Not in the biological sense, not lungs or muscles, but you, the I that experiences this moment. Who is that? It feels obvious, intuitive. The answer arises immediately. Me. But probe a little deeper, and the ground beneath that answer begins to feel less solid, less clear. What is this me, exactly? Are you your body? Your thoughts? Your memories? Are you your face in the mirror, or the voice in your head? Are you your name? Your soul? Your brain? If you remove each of those things one by one, does you remain? This is not a riddle. It's a doorway. And tonight, we're going to walk through it, gently, into one of the most mind-bending psychological illusions of all time. The illusion of the self. Let's start with something we all live by. Language. Every day you say things like, I think, I feel, I want, I remember, I am. And with each of those sentences, you quietly assume the presence of a speaker, a thinker, a feeler, a consistent I behind the curtain. But what if that I is a fiction? A very convincing, very useful, but ultimately illusory construction. This is the unsettling proposal at the heart of modern cognitive science, Buddhist philosophy, and even certain branches of neuroscience. That the self is not a thing, but a story. Not an entity, but a process. The Scottish philosopher David Hume, writing in the 18th century, famously examined his own mind and found nothing. He described introspection as a kind of experiment. He looked within, expecting to find a stable self, a core identity. But he didn't find it. Instead, he found only fleeting sensations, thoughts, images, feelings, memories, a flowing river of mental activity without a boatman. "I never can catch myself at any time without a perception," he wrote, "and never can observe anything but the perception." From this, he proposed what's known as the bundle theory of the self, the idea that what we call the self is nothing more than a bundle of perceptions, loosely connected by habit and memory. No true core, no soul in the machine, just a constantly shifting cloud of experience. Think of a tornado. It looks like a thing. You can point at it, watch it move, even measure its speed and path. But the tornado is not made of unique matter. It's a pattern, a temporary shape of wind and air. When the motion stops, the tornado vanishes. The self, Hume argued, is the same. A pattern, a performance. When the perceptions stop, there is no you hiding behind them. Modern neuroscience adds another eerie layer to this. Let's talk about split brain patients, individuals who have had the connection between the two hemispheres of their brain, the corpus callosum, surgically severed, usually as a treatment for severe epilepsy. These surgeries offered researchers a rare opportunity to study how the left and right hemispheres function when they can no longer communicate. And the results were surreal. In some experiments, images were shown to just one hemisphere. For example, the word toothbrush might be shown to the left visual field, processed by the right hemisphere. But when asked verbally what they saw, the patient couldn't say, because language is typically localized in the left hemisphere, which didn't receive the image. But when asked to draw what they saw with their left hand, controlled by the right brain, they could draw a toothbrush perfectly. Even stranger, in some cases the two hemispheres seemed to disagree. One hand would reach for a shirt, while the other pushed it away. One hand would close a door, and the other would reopen it. What does this mean? It suggests that the unified self we take for granted may not be so unified after all. That beneath our sense of wholeness are multiple systems, multiple agents, perhaps even multiple selves, coexisting, sometimes in harmony, sometimes not. And yet, despite this chaos, the brain continues telling a single, coherent story. The left hemisphere, in particular, has been called the interpreter. It invents explanations for behavior, even when it doesn't know the real cause. In other words, your brain is constantly writing a script, and then pretending it always knew the plot. This storytelling function is what some psychologists call the narrative self. It's the version of you that exists in memory, in reflection, in the stories you tell about yourself. It is crafted moment by moment and updated constantly, like a Wikipedia page edited by 100 invisible hands. Think about how you describe yourself. I'm an introvert. I'm ambitious. I've always been a curious person. These feel like facts, but they're really narratives. Stories stitched together from selective memory, cultural context, emotion, and repetition. You've told these stories so many times, you believe them deeply, but that doesn't make them true. The version of you that exists right now is likely different from the one that existed 5 years ago. And yet, your brain smooths out the differences. It draws a continuous line through your past, present, and imagined future, as if you were one unbroken thread. But is that thread real, or a mental illusion designed for survival? From an evolutionary perspective, the illusion of a stable self is remarkably useful. It allows for continuity, for responsibility, for learning from experience. It helps you plan, defend, belong. If you didn't believe in a consistent identity, how could you imagine a future version of yourself? How could you take responsibility for past actions? How could you make long-term decisions? So the brain creates the illusion, not to deceive, but to function. And this brings us to an ancient insight shared by traditions like Buddhism long before Western science caught up. There is no unchanging self. There is only the illusion of selfhood, a performance, a collection of aggregates, a stream of moments mistaken for a solid thing. The Buddha used the analogy of a chariot. Take away the wheels, the frame, the reins, the seat. What remains? Nothing that is inherently chariot. It was always just a collection of parts. The label was convenient, not essential. You too are such a construction. Take another breath, not as a self, but as a moment. Just breathe. Just awareness. Let go of the need to define who is breathing. Let the question dissolve. This is not a denial of your existence. It's a reframing, a softening of the illusion. You are not nothing, but you are not what you think you are. You are not the thinker behind the thoughts. You are the thoughts themselves, rising, passing, changing. You are not the owner of experience. You are the experience. This can feel frightening at first, like the ground is falling away beneath you. But it can also be freeing. Because when there is no fixed self, there is no self to protect, to perfect, to punish. You can simply be, without comparison, without identity, without narrative, just presence. Consider this: if your self is a story, then it can be rewritten. And if it can be rewritten, then you are never trapped. Not by your past, not by your labels, not even by your habits of thought. The you of yesterday is gone. The you of tomorrow is a myth. There is only now, and now again. And in this eternal unfolding, something beautiful is possible. You are not a fixed character in a plot. You are the author and the reader, the ink and the page. You are the process of being written and rewritten. Now let your awareness drift outward to the body, sensation, to the room, sound, to the breath, movement, and ask again, softly this time, who is aware of all this? There is no answer, not a final one. Only the question, only the awareness. And that's enough. Science, too, keeps returning to this mystery. Every time we open the hood of consciousness, we find no driver. We find modules, patterns, neural networks. We find processes interpreting data and telling a story about someone doing the interpreting. And yet, no one is found. Some researchers believe that consciousness arises from this very lack, that the illusion of selfhood is what stitches together disjointed processes into a coherent experience. In this view, the self is not an error, but a necessary fiction, a center of gravity, a virtual anchor in a sea of change. So, where does this leave us? Perhaps with a paradox. The self is not real, and yet it's essential. It is not fixed, and yet it shapes every choice. It is an illusion, and yet it is the illusion through which all other illusions are seen. And that perhaps is its magic. You can't escape the illusion entirely, but you can see through it, You can hold it lightly. You can stop clinging. And in that looseness, you may find peace. As you lay here now, in this quiet moment, let the idea settle gently. You are not your name, not your history, not your story. You are not the voice in your head, nor the image in the mirror, nor the mask you show the world. You are a moment, a flow, an unfolding awareness. And perhaps that is more than enough. And if the self is an illusion, maybe free will is too. Let's move forward now. Not as a fixed person making choices, but as a current being carried into the next mystery. What if your choices were never yours to begin with? What if freedom itself was just another story? Join me in the next segment as we unravel the paradox of free will gently. Do you control your choices, or are you just watching them happen? Let's begin gently. Picture yourself at a fork in the road, two quiet paths stretching into the mist. You pause, you breathe, you weigh your options, and then you choose. It feels like a simple truth. You made that decision. You could have chosen either way. You, the self, the chooser, the author of your actions, decided to go left or right or stay still. But tonight, we're going to slow that moment down, way down. We're going to look at what happens before you choose. What's stirring beneath the surface? What parts of the mind are whispering before you even hear them? And what you might find is this: you don't choose the way you think you do. You might not choose at all. This is the paradox of free will. The idea that we feel like free agents, piloting ourselves through life, making decisions and bearing responsibility, but under the hood, things may be very different. What if, beneath the conscious story you tell about your choices, the decision has already been made? What if the feeling of choosing is just that, a feeling, a story, a narration, a postscript? This question has haunted philosophers for millennia, but in the past few decades, it has taken on new life through neuroscience. And one experiment in particular cracked open the door to that mystery. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted a series of studies that would ignite decades of debate. Participants were asked to perform a very simple action: move a finger or a wrist whenever they felt the urge. No cue, no pressure, just whenever they wanted. While doing this, they watched a dot spinning around a clock face and were asked to note the exact time they became consciously aware of their intention to move. Meanwhile, electrodes recorded brain activity. Libet found something strange, something quietly revolutionary, a spike in neural activity, what he called the readiness potential, would appear several hundred milliseconds before the participant reported becoming aware of their decision to move. In simple terms, the brain prepared the action before the person felt like they had decided. The conscious, "I want to move," came after the brain had already started moving toward that outcome. It was as if the orchestra had already started playing, and the conductor took credit after the first note. This raised an uncomfortable question. Is conscious will just a narrator? A commentator? Do we choose, or do we explain what the brain already planned? Libet himself didn't claim that free will was dead. He proposed a kind of veto power, the idea that perhaps we don't initiate actions, but we can stop them at the last moment. but many others took the experiment more seriously. If the brain acts before we are aware, where then is the space for freedom? Subsequent studies have gone even further. More sophisticated versions of Liebert's experiment, using fMRI and machine learning, have shown that scientists can sometimes predict a person's decision several seconds before they consciously make it. That is, by scanning patterns of brain activity, a computer can often guess whether you'll press the left button or the right one before you know which you'll choose. This isn't mind reading, it's pattern recognition. But it suggests that choices emerge from unconscious processes long before the illusion of control kicks in. Think about that. You don't choose your thoughts. They appear. You don't choose your emotions. They rise. You don't even choose your desires. You just find them there, waiting for you. Where then is the you that chooses? Let's pause. Take a breath. Let your mind hover gently on this idea. What if the story of you, as a conscious chooser, is just that? A story, told after the fact. A voice in the back seat describing a journey already in motion. You say, I just decided to do it. But did you? Or did the decision appear in your mind like a raindrop on glass, unbidden? If this is true, if free will is illusory, what happens to the foundations of morality? What happens to blame, to praise, to punishment? If someone does something terrible, but their brain was moving in that direction before they were ever conscious of it, can we say they chose? And if someone creates something beautiful, but the urge emerged like a tide they merely rode, can we say they deserve the credit? These are not abstract puzzles. They cut deep into how we treat each other. Much of modern society is built on the assumption of agency, that people are responsible for their actions, that they could have done otherwise. But if you couldn't have, if no one ever truly could have, what then? Some neuroscientists and philosophers argue that this realization should change everything, from how we punish crime to how we view our own flaws. They say, if free will is an illusion, then compassion must take its place. We don't hate the hurricane for hitting the shore. We don't despise the fire for spreading. We understand that these forces follow causes, physics, weather, conditions, and we are no different. Your genetics, your upbringing, your culture, your traumas, your biology, they shape your actions long before your conscious mind weighs in. You are the result of causes, the output of a system you did not design. That doesn't mean you're helpless, but it means your control may be far less than you think. Some people hear this and feel despair. If I'm not in control, they ask, then what's the point? But maybe this insight isn't depressing. Maybe it's liberating. Maybe it means you can stop blaming yourself for every mistake, every failure, every impulse. Maybe it means you can stop hating others for theirs. You can still set boundaries, still protect yourself, still seek justice. But you do it with understanding, not illusion. You do it knowing that people are not evil by nature. They are formed, and that formation can be understood, and perhaps redirected. But let's soften this. Even if free will is an illusion, it's a useful one. Feeling like a chooser allows us to plan, to reflect, to learn. If you believe you can change, you often will. If you believe you are responsible, you often act more responsibly. The illusion becomes self-fulfilling, and perhaps that's the secret. Not that free will is real in the absolute sense, but that it's real enough to matter. A kind of cognitive placebo. We believe in freedom, and that belief helps shape better outcomes, even if the mechanism isn't what we thought. Philosopher Daniel Dennett calls this freedom evolved. Not freedom in the magical, metaphysical sense, but in the practical, biological one. You may not be able to choose your thoughts, but you can reflect on them. You may not choose your desires, but you can learn which ones to trust. You may not control every impulse, but you can train responses. And that begins to look like freedom. Not absolute, but emergent. Not infinite, but meaningful. A constrained, conscious navigation of a river you didn't choose to fall into. Return to the metaphor from the beginning, the fork in the road, the moment of choice. Now imagine that your body began walking left before your mind caught up, that your neurons fired, muscles moved, and then half a second later you decided to go left. It feels like you chose, but in truth, you were narrating the path your brain had already begun. Does that make you less free? Or just more mysterious? Some mystics and philosophers have suggested that true freedom comes not from choosing, but from witnessing, from seeing thoughts rise and fall without clinging, from watching decisions emerge without identifying with them. This is the teaching of non-duality, that the I who chooses and the choice itself are not separate. There is no observer behind the curtain. There is only the curtain, only the unfolding. The wave is not separate from the ocean. You are not the captain steering the ship. You are the current, the water, the wind. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's beautiful. Because in letting go of control, you discover flow. You stop trying to force your life and start participating in it. You stop needing to own your thoughts and start watching them with curiosity. You stop judging your choices and start understanding their causes. And in that understanding, compassion is born. So as you rest here, quiet and still, reflect on the choices you made today. Feel the space between action and awareness. Notice how your mind fills in the gaps, how it constructs stories of I did and I chose. But maybe you didn't. Not exactly. And maybe that doesn't diminish you. It humbles you. And in humility, freedom takes a new form. Not the freedom to control every moment, but the freedom to witness the moment clearly, to act without illusion, to live without clinging, to be. And what happens when a passenger tries to predict the future? Join me in the next chapter, where we explore the illusion of foresight, where we imagine futures that never come, expectations that never arrive, and predictions we can never quite trust. We'll ask, if the mind doesn't truly control the present, what hope does it have of knowing what comes next? Let's drift forward now into the next illusion. The illusion of prediction, cognitive biases, and future fantasies. We love to predict, but we're often wrong, repeatedly. Close your eyes, if they're not closed already. Let your breath fall into rhythm, like waves brushing against a shore. Now picture something. Picture a version of your life 2 years from now. Maybe you see yourself somewhere new, happier, healthier. Maybe you're in a relationship or out of one, working the dream job, owning the home, at peace. This picture feels like more than imagination. It feels like probability, a trajectory, something you're moving toward. And yet, if we could pull back the veil of time and observe your life 2 years from now, chances are it wouldn't look anything like this. Not because you failed, not because you weren't trying, but because the future does not like to be predicted. Tonight, we drift into another illusion of the mind, not the illusion of perception, not the illusion of memory, but the illusion of knowing what comes next. We call it planning, hoping, dreaming. We call it being realistic, but under the surface, something stranger is happening. Your brain is not forecasting reality, it's hallucinating it. And sometimes, that hallucination feels so good, we forget it's just a guess. Humans are a rare species. We think about the future constantly. More than any animal we've studied, we plan ahead, strategize, anticipate, project. This ability gave us a deep evolutionary advantage. By preparing for winter, storing food, building shelters, organizing communities, we survived. But this gift comes with a shadow, because the mind that can imagine what might happen is also the mind that overestimates what will happen. We don't just think about the future, we expect it to behave. We expect it to be fair, predictable, logical, linear. We expect that if we follow the plan, we'll get the outcome. And time again, we're wrong. Let's begin with a gentle bias, one that most of us carry, even in dark times. It's called the optimism bias. This is the tendency to believe that the future will be better than the past, even when there's no clear evidence to support that hope. We assume we'll be healthier next year, that we'll be wealthier, that we'll finally tackle the thing we've been putting off. We believe, quietly, persistently, that things will work out. And in many ways, this is beautiful. Hope has a function. It carries us through difficulty. But optimism bias blinds us to risk. We underestimate how long things will take. We overestimate how prepared we are. We assume bad things happen to other people. This is not a flaw of character. It's a default setting in the mind. And often it leaves us unprepared when life unfolds differently. Then there's the planning fallacy. Have you ever told yourself you'd finish something in an hour? And it took 3? Have you ever created a to-do list for the day and only completed half of it? If that? Have you set a deadline, promised it to yourself or others, and missed it over and over again? That's the planning fallacy in action. Even when we know from past experience that things take longer, we continue to believe that this time will be different. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky coined the term in the 1970s. They found that people, even experts, consistently underestimate the time, cost, and complexity of tasks. A college student may predict writing a paper will take 3 days. History shows it always takes a week. They still say, "This time I'll get it done early." We plan based on ideal conditions. We imagine our future selves as more focused, more disciplined, less distracted. But when that future becomes the present, we're still us, still human, still guessing. Then there's something even trickier. Not just how long the future will take, but how it will feel. This is called affective forecasting, our attempt to predict our future emotional states. We believe that getting the job, the house, the recognition, the relationship will make us happier. We believe that failure, rejection, embarrassment will devastate us permanently. And most of the time, we're wrong. When people win the lottery, their happiness spikes, briefly. Within a year, they usually return to their previous emotional baseline. When people experience loss or trauma, they suffer deeply. But within time, many of them adapt far better than they predicted. The mind is terrible at predicting emotional endurance. We forget how quickly we adapt to new circumstances. We forget how resilient we can be. We forget that joy and sorrow are not permanent conditions, but waves. We forecast a storm that never hits, or sunshine that fades too fast. Take a moment now. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts settle. Reflect on the last 5 years of your life. Think of a moment you were certain you knew what would happen. Did it go that way? Think of a time you were sure you wouldn't survive something. Yet here you are. Think of a dream you were certain would bring you joy. Did it? This is not about regret. This is about awareness. The future has never belonged to you, not because you didn't try, but because it was never meant to. We don't just live in the present. We live in imagined futures, thousands of them. We daydream. We plan. We anticipate. We worry. Our minds spin countless simulations each day, most of which never come true. And yet we live inside them. We suffer because of them. We pin our hopes to them. But perhaps we don't have to. Perhaps we can notice the illusion. The brain is not a crystal ball. It is a storyteller. It writes scenes before the actors show up. It fills in blanks. It creates futures that feel certain, but are anything but. And in seeing this, gently, without judgment, we can begin to soften our grip on expectation. We try to control the future because uncertainty feels like danger. Not knowing is uncomfortable, so we guess. We build frameworks. We tell ourselves, if I just do, X, Y will happen. But the world is rarely that simple. Markets crash. People change. Plans fall apart. Desires evolve. And if we hold too tightly to our predictions, we suffer twice. Once when things don't go as planned, and again when we blame ourselves for not seeing it coming. But let's pause here. Not to despair, to breathe. What if, instead of controlling the future, we became students of it? What if we approached life like weather? Patterns to observe, forecasts to consider, but always with humility. You check the forecast, sunny skies. You pack a picnic. Halfway through, the clouds roll in, rain falls, plans change. Do you blame yourself for believing the prediction? Number. You adapt. You find shelter. You laugh under an umbrella. Why not live life like that? Plan, yes, but hold plans loosely. Hope, but don't expect. Dream, but stay awake. And above all, don't believe everything your mind tells you about tomorrow. There's another layer to this, a quiet, haunting truth. Much of our emotional pain comes not from the present, but from futures that never arrive. Anxiety is fear of what might happen. Regret is grief for what could have been. Frustration is anger at the gap between what we expected and what is. So what happens when we let go of the expectation? Not abandon hope, not become passive, but let go of the illusion that we know what should happen. In that space, peace often enters. We stop fighting the current. We start floating. This doesn't mean don't plan. It means see your plans for what they are, educated guesses, tools, not truths. It doesn't mean don't dream. It means recognize dreams as possibilities, not promises. It doesn't mean don't prepare. It means understand that even the best preparation can't guarantee an outcome. And it doesn't mean don't care. It means care deeply, but without clinging. So now, with your body still, with your breath soft and slow, visualize again that future self. But this time, blur the edges. Let the image float like mist over water. Let go of needing it to be exactly that, because something else might be waiting. Something you haven't yet imagined. A joy you didn't plan for. A lesson you didn't seek. A strength you didn't know you had. The future is not a puzzle to solve. It is a horizon to walk toward, with curiosity, with courage, with humility. And maybe the illusion of prediction isn't bad. Maybe it's part of how we survive, but in seeing it clearly, we can suffer less when it fails. We can prepare without pretending to be prophets. We can dream without demanding guarantees. We can live moment to moment, eyes open, breath steady, aware of the storm clouds on the edge of the map, but not ruled by them. But it gets stranger. What if it's not just you that's uncertain? What if the world outside your mind is just as unstable? What happens when reality itself shifts depending on how it's observed? Join me in the next chapter as we explore a deeper illusion, the observer's illusion. Reality changes when watched. Because sometimes, it's not the future that's unpredictable. It's reality itself. Does observation shape reality? Settle in. Let the air slip gently through your lungs, like wind passing through open windows. Now, imagine this. You're walking alone through a forest. No phone, no camera, no map. Just you and the world. The trees are still. The wind breathes through the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cries once and goes silent. There's a strange comfort in this kind of moment, this sense that the world is simply being, existing, unseen, unfiltered, a quiet theater playing to an empty house. But now ask yourself something quietly disorienting. If no one sees the tree sway, if no creature hears the bird's wings lift, if no eye witnesses the moment, did it happen? This question isn't just poetic. It touches something strange, fundamental, and unsettling about how the universe might actually work. Because what if the act of watching doesn't just record reality? What if it creates it? Welcome to the observer's illusion, the idea that reality may not exist in a stable, objective form unless it's being observed. This is not just a trick of philosophy. It is a genuine puzzle at the heart of modern physics and psychology, a doorway where science and mind unravel together. It begins in the world of the very small, subatomic small, the world of particles and waves, the realm where reality does not obey the rules we're used to. At the beginning of the 20th century, scientists began probing the structure of atoms. What they found was not comforting. Instead of a neat, clockwork universe, they discovered something far more strange. A world where particles didn't seem to exist in one place at one time, but in a kind of probability cloud, a fuzzy range of potential locations, until, that is, they were observed. This phenomenon came to a head with one of the most famous and mind-breaking experiments in history, the double-slit experiment. Imagine this. You fire a beam of tiny particles, electrons, for example, at a wall with two narrow slits. Behind the wall is a screen that captures where the electrons land. If electrons were simple particles, you'd expect them to form two clusters behind the slits. But that's not what happens. When no one is observing which slit each electron passes through, the pattern that forms on the screen looks like a wave, a series of ripples, as if each electron somehow traveled through both slits at once and interfered with itself, like water splitting and recombining. This is known as wave-particle duality. The electron behaves like a wave of probabilities when unobserved. But, and here's the twist, if you place a measuring device to determine which slit the electron goes through, the interference pattern disappears. The electron starts behaving like a particle again. Two neat bands, no interference, no mystery. Just by measuring it, by watching, it behaves differently. This isn't just a laboratory anomaly. It's a mystery that cuts to the bone of reality, because it suggests that the act of observation collapses possibility into actuality. In other words, before it is observed, a particle isn't here or there. It is both, or neither. It exists in a state called superposition, a ghostly haze of all the places it could be. But the moment we observe it, the wave collapses into a point, a location, a fact. We aren't just watching reality, we are interfering with it. This is where science meets something eerily philosophical. What does it mean that something doesn't choose a state until it's observed? Who or what counts as an observer? Is it the measuring device, the scientist, the conscious mind? And if consciousness collapses the wave, what was the universe doing before consciousness existed? Was it real or just potential? These aren't science fiction questions. They are real debates in quantum mechanics and philosophy of mind. Some interpretations, like the Copenhagen interpretation, accept the strangeness and say, yes, observation determines reality. Others, like the many worlds interpretation, suggest that all outcomes happen, but in different parallel universes, and observation merely determines which one we find ourselves in. Either way, the universe becomes a kind of performance where the presence of the audience changes the script. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with you? You're not firing electrons or splitting atoms in your daily life, but the implications don't stay in physics. They bleed into psychology, into how we perceive the world, and how our perception might be shaping that world in return. Take perception itself. When you look at something, a chair, a tree, a stranger's face, your eyes take in raw data, but they don't see the object directly. The information must be interpreted by your brain. Your mind fills in gaps, adds meaning, builds the story of what you're seeing, and in doing so, your attention changes the experience. Consider how the same person can appear beautiful, threatening, or familiar depending on your mental state, or how a room can feel cold or warm safe or eerie, based on the emotion you carry into it. You are not just recording reality, you are projecting onto it. Now step deeper. Psychologists have long studied the observer effect in social settings. When people know they're being watched, they behave differently. This is called the Hawthorne effect, first observed in factory workers. When researchers studied them, productivity improved, not because of changes in conditions, but simply because they were being observed. In daily life, you know this too. You speak differently when someone is listening. You walk differently when you're being watched. You feel different when someone sees you. Your behavior, and even your sense of self, shifts in response to the gaze of others. And sometimes, just imagining being watched is enough to alter your actions. So we arrive at a strange echo between quantum physics and human psychology. At the smallest levels of the universe, matter behaves differently when observed. And in the world of experience, people behave differently when seen. It's as if reality itself, whether physical or psychological, is deeply relational. It doesn't just exist in isolation, it responds to awareness. Reality is not simply there, it is entangled with perception. Let this settle for a moment. Breathe in. Hold that breath, not too tightly. Now let it go, and ask yourself, what if the world is not what you see? But what seeing does to it? What if perception isn't just a window, but a mirror? This leads us to a question more ancient than quantum physics, a question that echoes in mysticism, meditation, and metaphysics. Is anything real when it is not observed? If the tree falls in the forest, if the electron passes through the slit, if the emotion arises unshared, what is its status? What is its weight? Is reality something out there? Or is it something in here, awakened by the act of noticing? Let's return to the forest for a moment. You're walking again. The wind brushes your skin. The sky softens into twilight. Now imagine you stop. Close your eyes and stand perfectly still. Everything continues. But now, you're not looking. Are the trees still green? Are the clouds still moving? Is the world still behaving? Your instinct says yes, of course. But you've also learned, tonight, that instinct is not always truth. That perception is construction. That observation changes outcomes. That the presence of the observer may stabilize the world. And so the silence of the unseen becomes a kind of riddle. In the world of dreams, this is even more obvious. You've had dreams where objects appear only when you look, where the world collapses into possibility when you close your eyes, and reforms when you open them. Is waking life so different? Perhaps not in degree, but maybe in kind. We assume waking life is objective, solid, grounded, measurable. But even here, your senses deceive. Your mind interprets. Your memories shift, and your presence alters the environment you're in. This can be unsettling. If everything is shaped by observation, then what is real apart from the observer? The answer is, we don't know, and maybe we never can. The observer can't fully step outside the system it observes. You can't see behind your own eyes. You can't witness the world from a place that's untouched by your own consciousness. There is no God's eye view. There is only yours. But maybe this is not a problem to be solved. Maybe it's a truth to be lived, a deep, humbling truth that we don't live in a fixed reality. We live in a relational one, a world that reflects, responds, and refracts through the lens of mind. And in seeing this clearly, without panic, without clinging, we awaken a new kind of awareness. Not the awareness of control, but the awareness of participation. You are not a passive watcher. You are a node, a lens, a creator of moments. You are the camera and the light. Let this soften you. Let it calm you. Because in some ways, this changes everything. It means the world is not indifferent. It means your attention matters. It means your presence changes the space you occupy. You do not see the world as it is. You see the world as it responds to you. And that is not failure. It is intimacy. Let's pull that thread even further, into the very fabric of consciousness. Because if observation shapes reality, then who or what is doing the observing? Who is watching the thoughts, the breath, the body? And what is consciousness, if not the ultimate observer? In the next chapter, we explore the illusion not of the world outside, but the dream within, a question deeper than any experiment. Are you conscious, or just dreaming you are? Join me next as we step quietly into the dream machine. Are you conscious or just dreaming? If a dream feels real, how do you know you're awake? You are here, listening, breathing. The world around you feels stable, predictable, awake. But now, ask yourself something soft and strange. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. How do you know? Because the answer isn't as simple as you might expect. Dreams have a way of disguising themselves. They feel real until they don't. And sometimes, reality behaves exactly the same way. Tonight, we step quietly into the dream machine, the part of your mind that generates consciousness itself, and the strange possibility that you have never truly woken up. Imagine this. You are walking down a hallway. The floor is familiar. The light is soft. You reach for a door, open it, and step into a room you recognize, but cannot name. Suddenly, a person enters. They smile at you, but their face is blurred. You speak to them, and you don't remember the words. You try to move your hands, and they feel distant, underwater. And then, you wake up. Your heart slows, your eyes adjust, and you tell yourself, it was just a dream. But in that moment, inside the dream, didn't it feel real? Didn't you believe it entirely? That's the power of dreaming. It doesn't seem like fiction while you're inside it. It doesn't reveal itself as illusion until after you leave. And so we return to that first quiet question. If a dream can feel real while you're dreaming, how do you know this moment isn't another dream? The experience of dreaming teaches us something disturbing and beautiful, that the brain can construct entire worlds, and those worlds can feel exactly like this one. They have sound, space, language, emotion, memory. Your dream self often believes it is awake. Your dream mind solves problems, loves people, makes decisions. Only when you wake up does the dream reveal itself as artificial. So we ask again, gently, curiously, what if consciousness itself is just a dream you never wake up from? Let's explore the phenomenon of lucid dreaming. A lucid dream is one in which you become aware within the dream that you are dreaming. This doesn't make the dream vanish. Instead, it becomes more vivid. You can walk through it, bend it, fly through skies, speak to imagined people. You are still asleep, but your conscious awareness has entered the simulation. Lucid dreaming reveals something extraordinary. You can be conscious within an unconscious state. That awareness does not depend on physical reality. It depends on internal coherence, on believing the illusion or not. And so, we ask, if you can be conscious in a dream, why not be dreaming within consciousness? The French philosopher René Descartes once tried to answer this very question. He set out to find something he could know for certain, something indubitable. But as he peeled away layer after layer of belief, he realized something troubling, that everything could be doubted. His senses could deceive him. His memories might be false. Even the logic he used could be corrupted. What if, he wondered, some evil demon was tricking him, feeding him illusions, making him believe he had a body, a mind, a world? And yet, even as he doubted everything, he found one thing remained: the doubting itself. The act of questioning proved that someone was doing the questioning. Hence his famous conclusion, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. It was the only thing he couldn't deny. But Descartes' demon lives on. Not as a monster in the shadows, but as a metaphor for the part of your mind that creates reality and convinces you to believe it. Today, Descartes' evil demon wears a new mask: simulation theory. The idea that you might be living in a computer simulation, so advanced, so immersive, that you cannot distinguish it from base reality. The philosopher Nick Bostrom argued that if any civilization survives long enough to create hyper-realistic simulations of minds, there would be many more simulated minds than real ones. Statistically, then, it's far more likely that you are a simulated consciousness rather than a biological one. Elon Musk once echoed the idea, claiming that we are most likely living in a simulation. Of course, this is speculative, philosophical, unprovable. But that's the point. Just like a dream, a simulation can be internally coherent. It doesn't need to reveal its artificiality to the user. And the user, you, would have no way to step outside of it to verify. It's not that this is likely, it's that you cannot know. And that, by itself, is enough to destabilize the ground beneath your feet. Pause here. Feel the breath rise and fall. Feel the surface beneath you. Feel the weight of awareness settling into your body. All of this feels real, but it also feels interpreted. Not raw data, but experience. Filtered, colored, constructed. Your consciousness is not a window to the world. It is the world, as far as you will ever know it. This brings us to something even stranger. You are not just perceiving the world. You are perceiving yourself. You are watching your own thoughts rise and fall. You are aware of being aware. But what is that awareness? Where is it? What shape does it take? Can you find its edges? Can you point to the you behind the eyes? Try. Close your eyes and ask, who is seeing this darkness? Who is listening to this voice? Again and again, awareness turns inward and finds only more awareness. Not a person, not a self, just observation. Some call this the hard problem of consciousness, the question of how subjective experience arises from physical processes, how a brain made of neurons and chemicals can produce the feeling of being. Science can describe brain function. It can scan blood flow, measure electrical signals, but it cannot tell you why a color feels rich, or a song evokes memory, or pain hurts. It cannot explain the shimmering aliveness of experience. So maybe consciousness is not a light in the dark. Maybe it is the dream of a system that cannot see itself. Maybe it is a hallucination told by the brain to itself, not because it is false, but because it is necessary. A dream the brain cannot afford to wake from, because waking would mean nothing is left. Just patterns, just signals, just emptiness. And perhaps that's what you are. Not a soul, not a self, not a thinker behind the thoughts. Just this, consciousness, dreaming itself. You are the mirror, not the face. The lens, not the subject. The dream, not the dreamer. And yet, somehow, still awake. Lucid dreaming taught us that awareness can exist inside illusion. Descartes taught us that doubt itself proves something exists. Simulation theory reminds us that reality might not be what it seems, and consciousness itself remains the greatest mystery of all. But maybe it doesn't need to be solved. Maybe it only needs to be seen, not grasped, just witnessed, the way you might witness a cloud moving across the sky. Beautiful, formless, ungraspable, here, then gone, and yet somehow enough. Let this soothe you. Let it loosen the grip of certainty. You don't need to know what consciousness is. You don't need to be sure you are awake. You only need to be here, now, not asleep, not dreaming, but simply aware of breath, of sound, of stillness, of mystery. And if, in some deeper sense, this is all a dream, then let it be a beautiful one. A dream where you are safe, where you are seen, where you are allowed to question. Because questioning, too, is part of the dream. Part of what it means to be conscious. Part of what it means to exist at all. Let's turn the lens inward again, back to how your mind deceives itself. Because even within this dream, even within this shimmering illusion of thought and being, your mind continues to edit the story. It changes the facts, rewrites the details, protects the self, even when there is no self to protect. Join me next as we explore the next illusion. Cognitive dissonance. The lie you tell yourself to stay sane. Because sometimes even dreams need defense mechanisms. Your identity isn't just yours, it's crowdsourced. Close your eyes. Let your breath settle into a rhythm. Feel the air move through you, calm and effortless. Now imagine standing before a mirror. You see your face reflected back. Familiar, solid, recognizable. But then imagine another mirror behind you, and then another beside you, and then 100 more, each one held in someone else's hand. Your mother, a stranger, your teacher, your first love, your oldest friend. Each mirror shows a different version of your face, a different expression, a different posture. Some of them you recognize. Others feel strange, foreign, even false. And suddenly you begin to wonder, which one is really me? This is the beginning of tonight's illusion. Not the illusion of memory, not of time, not of consciousness, but the illusion of the self as private property. Because what if who you are is not determined by you alone? What if your identity isn't a solitary invention, but a social collaboration? What if, at your core, you are who they think you are? This idea that the self is not fixed but reflected has been echoed for centuries in poetry, philosophy, and now psychology. In 1902, sociologist Charles Horton Cooley introduced a concept that still echoes today: the looking glass self. According to Cooley, we don't form our identities in isolation. We form them by imagining how others see us. We observe their reactions, real or perceived. We interpret their judgments, accurate or not, and we build our self-concept from that feedback. We become the echo of other people's opinions. You look in the mirror, yes, but behind the mirror is a crowd, watching, whispering, and you, without realizing it, begin to shape yourself to match their gaze. Consider this. You're told from a young age that you're smart. People praise your grades, your quick answers, so you begin to act smart. You study harder, speak more carefully, avoid risks that might make you seem foolish. Or you're told you're shy, so you talk less, hang back. Eventually, you start to feel shy. But are you? Or did you simply believe the mirror they handed you? This is how identity is co-authored, a negotiation between what you believe and what you think others believe about you. You are not only the person who looks out through your eyes, you are also the person reflected in theirs. And those reflections don't just influence your self-image, they shape your behavior. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted a series of experiments that revealed just how deeply we are shaped by the social mirror. Participants were placed in a group with actors who were instructed to give clearly wrong answers to simple visual questions, like which line was longest. Even though the correct answer was obvious, many participants conformed to the group's wrong answer. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Why? Because the need to belong is stronger than the need to be right. We are social creatures, and to be accepted by the group, we will bend what we see, what we think, even who we are. We don't just mirror others to learn, we mirror them to exist. Now ask yourself, gently, how much of your identity is truly yours? And how much has been sculpted, quietly, gradually, by the people around you? The way you dress, the way you speak, the music you love, the things you fear. Did you choose them freely? Or were they shaped by family, by culture, by the quiet weight of expectation? Even rebellion can be a form of reflection. When you push against someone's image of you, you're still defining yourself in relation to them. And so, again, we return to the mirror. Even when we try to break it, we're still looking into it. Psychologist Irving Goffman described this dynamic as impression management, He likened social interaction to a stage play. Each of us is an actor, performing a version of ourselves, depending on the role we're playing. At work, we wear the mask of competence. At home, perhaps a mask of care. Among friends, one of humor. Alone, perhaps no mask at all. Or perhaps another. Goffman didn't mean this cynically. He didn't say we're all fakes. He said we're all adapting, performing, responding to the social environment. Identity, in his view, isn't false. It's fluid. And the more we understand this, the less rigidly we cling to the idea of a single, true me. Take another breath. Not as the version of you show to others, but as something softer, quieter. The awareness that watches the masks shift, that knows they are masks, and forgives them for being necessary. Because to exist in a world of mirrors, you must sometimes reflect what others need to see, not out of deceit, but out of survival, out of connection, out of love. But what happens when the mirrors distort? What happens when someone sees you wrongly? As cruel, or weak, or insignificant? And what happens when you begin to believe them? This is the danger of the social mirror. When it's warped, it can warp you. Think of the student constantly labeled as a troublemaker, or the child never praised for creativity, or the adult whose value is tied to productivity alone. The reflection becomes the reality, not because it's true, but because it's all that's shown. In this way, identity can become a kind of prison, a costume you're forced to wear. But the cell isn't locked from the outside. It's locked from within by the belief that the mirror is accurate, by the belief that you must perform the version of you that others expect. And so the question becomes, can you escape the mirror? Maybe the answer isn't escape. Maybe the answer is awareness. To see the mirror for what it is, a tool, a lens, not a truth. To recognize that while others reflect versions of you, you are under no obligation to agree. You can take what resonates and leave the rest behind. You can hold your identity like a river, not a statue, changing, moving, reflecting, but never frozen. This can be difficult because we crave definition. We want to be someone, and society encourages this, pressuring us to pick labels, roles, brands. But what if you allowed yourself to be indeterminate? What if you accepted that who you are today may not be who you are tomorrow? That the mask you wear in one place may be no less valid than the one you wear in another. Not because they are fake, but because they are fragments, pieces of a larger truth that no single mirror can capture. So take a moment right now. Reflect on the images others hold of you. What have they praised you for? What have they criticized? What roles have they cast you in? And ask, do those reflections serve me? If not, you can let them go. Not with anger, not with defiance, just with quiet clarity. Because the most powerful thing you can say to a distorted mirror is, "That is not me." And even more powerful, "That may have been me once, but not anymore." Because identity is not a fossil, it is a flame, and you are allowed to change. You are allowed to rewrite your story, even if others still believe the old version. In time, the mirrors will catch up, and if they don't, you'll learn to walk without needing their approval. Because the truest mirror is the one inside, the one that doesn't distort, doesn't judge, doesn't cling. It simply watches and smiles. But perhaps the deepest illusion is that we're meant to understand it all. We've explored identity, memory, perception, reality. But what if understanding isn't the point? What if the human mind, so desperate to know, is chasing an illusion? The illusion that there is an answer to all of this. Join me next as we step into the final veil of mystery, the comprehension illusion. You understand less than you think, because sometimes the deepest wisdom is knowing when to stop asking and simply be. Your identity isn't just yours, it's crowdsourced. Close your eyes. Let your breath settle into a rhythm. Feel the air move through you, calm and effortless. Now imagine standing before a mirror. You see your face reflected back. Familiar, solid, recognizable. But then imagine another mirror behind you, and then another beside you, and then 100 more, each one held in someone else's hand. Your mother, a stranger, your teacher, your first love, your oldest friend. Each mirror shows a different version of your face, a different expression, a different posture. Some of them you recognize. Others feel strange, foreign, even false. And suddenly, you begin to wonder, which one is really me? This is the beginning of tonight's illusion. Not the illusion of memory, not of time, not of consciousness, but the illusion of the self as private property. Because what if who you are is not determined by you alone? What if your identity isn't a solitary invention, but a social collaboration? What if, at your core, you are who they think you are? This idea that the self is not fixed but reflected has been echoed for centuries in poetry, philosophy, and now, psychology. In 1902, sociologist Charles Horton Cooley introduced a concept that still echoes today: the looking glass self. According to Cooley, we don't form our identities in isolation. We form them by imagining how others see us. We observe their reactions, real or perceived. We interpret their judgments, accurate or not, and we build our self-concept from that feedback. We become the echo of other people's opinions. You look in the mirror, yes, but behind the mirror is a crowd, watching, whispering, and you, without realizing it, begin to shape yourself to match their gaze. Consider this. You're told from a young age that you're smart. People praise your grades, your quick answers, so you begin to act smart. You study harder, speak more carefully, avoid risks that might make you seem foolish, or you're told you're shy, so you talk less, hang back. Eventually, you start to feel shy. But are you? Or did you simply believe the mirror they handed you? This is how identity is co-authored, a negotiation between what you believe and what you think others believe about you. You are not only the person who looks out through your eyes, you are also the person reflected in theirs. And those reflections don't just influence your self-image, they shape your behavior. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted a series of experiments that revealed just how deeply we are shaped by the social mirror. Participants were placed in a group with actors who were instructed to give clearly wrong answers to simple visual questions, like which line was longest. Even though the correct answer was obvious, many participants conformed to the group's wrong answer, not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Why? Because the need to belong is stronger than the need to be right. We are social creatures, and to be accepted by the group, we will bend what we see, what we think, even who we are. We don't just mirror others to learn, we mirror them to exist. Now ask yourself gently, how much of your identity is truly yours? And how much has been sculpted, quietly, gradually, by the people around you? The way you dress, the way you speak, the music you love, the things you fear. Did you choose them freely? Or were they shaped by family, by culture, by the quiet weight of expectation? Even rebellion can be a form of reflection. When you push against someone's image of you, you're still defining yourself in relation to them. And so, again, we return to the mirror. Even when we try to break it, we're still looking into it. Psychologist Irving Goffman described this dynamic as impression management. He likened social interaction to a stage play. Each of us is an actor, performing a version of ourselves, depending on the role we're playing. At work, we wear the mask of competence. At home, perhaps a mask of care. Among friends, one of humor. Alone, perhaps no mask at all. Or perhaps another. Goffman didn't mean this cynically. He didn't say we're all fakes. He said we're all adapting, performing, responding to the social environment. Identity, in his view, isn't false. It's fluid. And the more we understand this, the less rigidly we cling to the idea of a single, true me. Take another breath. Not as the version of you show to others, but as something softer, quieter. The awareness that watches the masks shift, that knows they are masks, and forgives them for being necessary. Because to exist in a world of mirrors, you must sometimes reflect what others need to see, not out of deceit, but out of survival, out of connection, out of love. But what happens when the mirrors distort? What happens when someone sees you wrongly, as cruel, or weak, or insignificant? And what happens when you begin to believe them? This is the danger of the social mirror. When it's warped, it can warp you. Think of the student constantly labeled as a troublemaker, or the child never praised for creativity, or the adult whose value is tied to productivity alone. The reflection becomes the reality. Not because it's true, but because it's all that's shown. In this way, identity can become a kind of prison, a costume you're forced to wear. But the cell isn't locked from the outside. It's locked from within, by the belief that the mirror is accurate, by the belief that you must perform the version of you that others expect. And so the question becomes, can you escape the mirror? Maybe the answer isn't escape. Maybe the answer is awareness. To see the mirror for what it is, a tool, a lens, not a truth. To recognize that while others reflect versions of you, you are under no obligation to agree. You can take what resonates and leave the rest behind. You can hold your identity like a river, not a statue, changing, moving, reflecting, but never frozen. This can be difficult because we crave definition. We want to be someone, and society encourages this, pressuring us to pick labels, roles, brands. But what if you allowed yourself to be indeterminate? What if you accepted that who you are today may not be who you are tomorrow? That the mask you wear in one place may be no less valid than the one you wear in another. Not because they are fake, but because they are fragments, pieces of a larger truth that no single mirror can capture. So take a moment, right now, reflect on the images others hold of you. What have they praised you for? What have they criticized? What roles have they cast you in? And ask, do those reflections serve me? If not, you can let them go, not with anger, not with defiance, just with quiet clarity. Because the most powerful thing you can say to a distorted mirror is, that is not me. And even more powerful, that may have been me once, but not anymore. Because identity is not a fossil, it is a flame. And you are allowed to change. You are allowed to rewrite your story, even if others still believe the old version. In time, the mirrors will catch up. And if they don't, you'll learn to walk without needing their approval. Because the truest mirror is the one inside. The one that doesn't distort, doesn't judge, doesn't cling. It simply watches and smiles. But perhaps the deepest illusion is that we're meant to understand it all. We've explored identity, memory, perception, reality. But what if understanding isn't the point? What if the human mind, so desperate to know, is chasing an illusion? The illusion that there is an answer to all of this. Join me next as we step into the final veil of mystery, the comprehension illusion. You understand less than you think. Because sometimes, the deepest wisdom is knowing when to stop asking and simply be. You think you understand how a toilet works, but do you? Take a breath. Hold it gently for a moment. Now, release it and consider something strange and simple. You're sitting in a quiet room, lights low, perhaps listening from the warmth of your bed. You're relaxed, awake, but soft around the edges. And if I asked you right now to explain how a zipper works, how a bicycle changes gears, or how your refrigerator keeps food cold, you'd probably say, yeah, I think I get it. You've used these things, seen them, touched them. They're part of your daily world. They're familiar. But now, imagine I hand you a pencil and paper. I ask you to draw each part of a toilet and explain what happens when you flush. Suddenly, things get murky. Where does the water go exactly? What's the mechanism that starts and stops the refill? How do the pipes maintain pressure without backflow? You pause, you fumble, and then you realize, I thought I understood this. But you don't. And it's not just you. It's almost everyone. This is what psychologists call the illusion of explanatory depth. The belief that we understand complex systems more deeply than we actually do until we're asked to explain them. And once we try, the illusion breaks. This illusion is common, quiet, and deeply human. It affects our understanding of not just machines, but politics, relationships, biology, technology, even the weather. Ask someone how thunderstorms form, They might say something about cold fronts or moisture or pressure. But press further. What's actually happening in the clouds? How do lightning and thunder synchronize? Most people can't explain. And that's okay. The illusion isn't about ignorance. It's about comfort. We live in a world that feels understandable. Because if we had to admit we didn't know how most things worked, every single day, we'd be overwhelmed. So the brain offers us a shortcut. Assume comprehension, not full understanding, just enough to move forward, enough to function, enough to feel safe. This shortcut is a feature, not a flaw. It allows us to operate in a complex world without freezing. You don't need to understand combustion engines to drive a car. You don't need to know fluid dynamics to wash your hands. You don't need to grasp atmospheric pressure to pack an umbrella. But the problem arises when we confuse function with understanding. We believe we know because we can operate something. But operating is not the same as explaining. It's not the same as knowing the why behind the how. And in that gap, the illusion lives. Psychologists Stephen Sloman and Philip Fernbach explored this illusion in a landmark study. They asked participants to rate how well they understood everyday objects, like toilets, zippers, and bicycles. Then, they asked the same participants to write detailed, step-by-step explanations of how those objects worked. After this exercise, the participants re-rated their own understanding, and their confidence plummeted. The act of trying to explain revealed how little they actually knew. They had confused familiarity with comprehension. Now pause. Let that idea drift through your body like a slow current. How many things do you feel you understand, but have never truly examined? Not because you're careless, but because the illusion is so natural. Think of it like walking through a house in the dark. You know the layout by heart. Your feet move confidently. You trust the memory of where the furniture is. But if someone rearranged the room just slightly, you'd stub your toe in an instant. That's the illusion of comprehension. You think you know the world's layout until something shifts, and the implications go beyond toilets and zippers. This illusion influences how we think, what we believe, and how we talk to one another. People often hold strong opinions about complex issues, tax policy, climate change, foreign affairs, based on headlines, instincts, or simplified narratives. But if asked to explain why they believe what they do, they struggle, just like with the toilet. This isn't a critique of intelligence. It's a commentary on how we construct meaning. We don't build beliefs from deep analysis. We build them from social cues, emotional resonance, and surface-level familiarity. The result is a world where confidence often outweighs understanding. You see it in debates, in online arguments, in interviews and panels and conversations with friends. People speak as if they know. But ask them to define, to unpack, to clarify. And the illusion unravels. The depth isn't there. And yet, we rarely notice, because most of the time, we're not seeking truth. We're seeking certainty. Why? Because certainty feels safe. It gives us structure, predictability, a foundation to build identity upon. To say, I know, is powerful. To say, I don't know, is vulnerable. So we pretend, even to ourselves. We act as if we know. We speak as if we understand. We carry the illusion, not out of arrogance, but out of need. This raises a deeper question. What if the comfort of knowing is just another trick, a mental lullaby, a whispered bedtime story to soothe the fear of uncertainty. Because the truth is, we understand far less than we think, not just about the external world, but about ourselves. Think of the mind. We use it every moment. But we don't understand how thoughts form, where ideas come from, why certain memories return, why moods shift without cause. We ride the current of our minds without ever seeing the river. And yet we assume, I know myself. But do you? Or is that too a dream of understanding? The illusion of comprehension isn't limited to knowledge. It extends to consciousness itself. You believe you are a coherent self, a unified I navigating the world. But as we've explored, the self is a story, a bundle, a reflection. So when you say, I understand, who is speaking and what is being grasped? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps understanding is not a possession, but a performance. Now breathe. Let that breath soften the tightness in your mind. Because this isn't a failure. It's a truth. And in that truth, there is freedom. You are not supposed to understand everything. You are not meant to carry certainty like armor. You are allowed to be confused, to not know, to live in the space between clarity and mystery. Because that space is where wonder lives. Consider this. Children don't demand complete understanding to be amazed. They ask why again and again, not because they expect the ultimate answer, but because the question itself is beautiful. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds sing? Why do people fall in love? These aren't problems to solve. They're invitations to see more clearly, even if we never arrive at final comprehension. So maybe the illusion of understanding isn't something to destroy. Maybe it's something to greet, to say, I know that I don't know. And from that honesty, begin again. Not with explanations, but with presence. Let your breath return to you now. Feel the body where it rests, the weight of not knowing, the ease of surrender. You don't need to be right. You don't need to explain. You don't need to fix the universe in place. You only need to be here, witnessing, asking, letting go. Let's conclude with one final illusion, the most human one of all. We've walked through memory, perception, identity, choice, and understanding. But beneath them all is a single, luminous thread, the search for meaning. And meaning may be the most persistent illusion of all. Join me next for our final chapter, the meaning illusion, purpose in a random world. Because perhaps the greatest mystery is not what the world is, but why we need it to mean something. Humans crave meaning, patterns, symbols, stories, but the universe may not care. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the quiet deepen around you. Let your breath fall into rhythm, slow, easy, unforced. The world outside begins to dissolve into shadows. The hum of daily thinking grows quieter, like a fire burning low. Now gently ask yourself, why are you here? Not here in this room, not here on this planet, but here, in the deepest, most profound sense. Why does anything exist? Why do you exist? This is the question that lies under all other questions. The ache behind our science, our art, our rituals, and our prayers. the whisper we carry through every moment of joy, every hour of despair. What does this mean? From the time we can speak, we begin to seek. We ask why the sky is blue, why people cry, why things happen the way they do. We grow into people who look for lessons in heartbreak. We give names to stars and reasons to storms. We believe in destiny, in soulmates, in fate. And maybe we believe because we need to. Because the alternative, that life is without reason or design, is too much to bear. And so we craft meanings the way a spider spins a web, instinctively, necessarily, beautifully. Even if the structure is fragile and floating in the dark, this is the illusion of meaning. Not an illusion in the sense of falsehood or deception, but illusion as something created, something projected onto the vastness to make it navigable. Like light on a cave wall, like a compass drawn on a spinning ocean, meaning is not found. It is made. And yet, we often mistake our creations for discoveries. Imagine a child staring at the clouds. She sees a dragon, then a castle, then a woman's face. No one else sees the same images, but to her, they are real, vivid, alive. This is the mind's talent for apophenia, the tendency to see patterns in randomness, to find meaning where there may be none. It is the same impulse that sees faces in tree bark, messages in dreams, omens in coincidences. And while it may seem childish, apophenia never leaves us. We grow up and find patterns in the stock market. We seek signs from the universe. We read our horoscopes. We believe we met someone at just the right moment. The mind searches tirelessly for connection, for coherence, for narrative, even in chaos, especially in chaos. Consider this. When something terrible happens, a sudden loss, an illness, a failure, we don't simply grieve. We ask why. We look for lessons. We invent reasons. We shape pain into purpose. Not because the event demands meaning, but because we do. We need the pain to fit into a larger story. One where there's growth, redemption, order, even if the story is fiction. Psychologists call this meaning-making, the process of constructing personal significance from our experiences, especially in times of uncertainty or trauma. It's one of our most powerful coping tools, and also one of our greatest blind spots, because in our desperate need for meaning, we often ignore randomness. We assume things happen to us, or for us, that suffering is a test, or a punishment, or a doorway. And sometimes it is. But sometimes a storm is just a storm. And that truth is hard to sit with. So we create illusions, beautiful, aching illusions that tell us we matter, that someone or something is watching, that life has a direction. And maybe we believe them because the alternative feels like staring into a void. But what if the void is not empty? What if it is full of possibility? There's a psychological theory known as terror management theory. It suggests that much of human behavior, our beliefs, our values, even our cultures, are built as a defense against the knowledge of our own mortality. We know we will die. We know life is temporary. And that awareness, left unsoothed, creates existential terror. So we build structures to hold on to. We create religions, ideologies, causes. We immerse ourselves in culture and legacy and achievement, not just to live well, but to live in spite of death. Terror management theory doesn't say these beliefs are false. It says they are functional. They give us the illusion of permanence. They tell us, I am part of something bigger. I will be remembered. I mattered. And whether or not that's objectively true, it is psychologically essential. So perhaps meaning is not about truth or lies. Perhaps it is about need. Just as the body needs warmth, the mind needs purpose. Not because the universe offers it, but because without it, we drift. Purpose gives us direction. Meaning gives us momentum. Even if those things are not built into the fabric of the universe, they are woven into us. Now breathe. Let this idea settle in your body like a stone into water. Not heavy, but grounding. You don't have to believe that the universe has a plan for you. You don't have to find your purpose written in the stars, because you can write it yourself. You can give meaning to the moments that matter, to the people you love, to the paths you choose, to the words you speak. The meaning doesn't have to come from above. It can rise from within, like steam from a cup of tea, like a whisper in the dark. Software impermanent, and enough. So yes, maybe meaning is an illusion, but perhaps it is the most human illusion of all. Not a failure of logic, but a triumph of imagination. The ability to cast light into the unknown, to find music in noise, story in suffering, pattern in pain. This is not weakness, it is art. Let this be your final comfort tonight. You are not here to solve the universe. You are here to feel it, to walk through it, to wonder at it, to love in spite of it. And in that choice, that human choice, you create meaning, not absolute, but personal. And sometimes, that is the only kind of meaning that matters. So now, as the edges of consciousness grow soft, as the day fades into stillness, take a moment to reflect, not with analysis, but with openness. Let the illusions you've explored tonight wash through you. The illusion of memory, of self, of time, of choice, of knowledge, of control. Each one beautiful in its own way. Each one pointing not to emptiness, but to possibility. Because if reality is shaped by illusion, then peace may not lie in escaping the illusion, but in understanding it, gently, lovingly, and without fear. You don't need to wake up from the dream. You only need to know it's a dream, and then dream it well. Thank you for spending this time in stillness. Thank you for wondering. And remember, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not unfinished. You are a story in motion, a pattern unfolding, a dream, dreaming itself. Good night.